We do like to get out to the community. We find ourselves sometimes in Mérida, sometimes we go out further. We just did a trip over to Mani to talk about visas and also to execute some passport applications there for persons who speak only Mayan and have trouble accessing our services because we only have them currently in Spanish and English, and hopefully we can translate them to Mayan soon to help them. As we were welcome, thank you so much for having us today. This is a great event. Thank you to Mérida English Library for this. Thank you to you guys for attending. Again, my name is Jacob Grinnell. I'm the chief of the Consular Section in Mérida. This is my 5th overseas tour. I am a US diplomat. Previous tours were all over the world. I've yet to repeat a region, so this is my first time in the Western Hemisphere. Previous tour was in Johannesburg, before that London, before that Israel, and before that the Philippines. With me is Carolina. She's been here much longer than me. I've only been here for a year, but Carolina has been here for multiple years. And she's with our American Citizen Services, and I'll let her give you a few words about herself.
Hi, I'm Carolina. I work at the American Citizen Services Section. I have been in Mérida for 7 years, and before that I used to work at the US Consulate in Tamaulipas by the border with Brownsville, Texas. So I have been at the consulate for more than 20 years, and I have been working all the time in the American Citizen Services Section.
Great, thanks. So as mentioned, we will do questions at the end. You can ask questions about our presentation. You can ask general questions about other services. We do offer quite a few American Citizen Services, including passport renewals, emergency passports. If you lose a passport and you need to travel back to the States immediately, things of that nature. And we can also answer visa questions if you have friends that are asking you how to visit the US and why is the wait time so long. But before we get to that, we're going to talk about preparing for hurricanes. So the first thing that we need to understand is that we are in hurricane season. We've been in hurricane season for a while. Hurricane season actually started June 1st, and this is on the Atlantic side. So we're going to focus on the Atlantic side because on the Pacific side, it's a different season. Although we will sometimes see down here, the Pacific hurricanes can come right into the Atlantic. So, but we're going to, for now, focus on Atlantic. Has anyone ever been in a hurricane before? Yes.
Wow.
Okay. So I grew up on the East Coast, over by Washington, D.C., and during the summers, we would go off to Ocean City, Maryland, and we had a little condo there, and it was great. And every so often, a hurricane would barrel through when we were there, and my parents would say, okay, tropical storm, category 1, category 2, all of those are great for body surfing and going out and boogie boarding. That I may not recommend to all of you, but it does give me a newfound appreciation for hurricane category 3s, and that's when I start to get concerned. But you will start to see the consulate messaging when we start to see tropical storms or hurricane 1. Category 1, and we'll go into that a little bit more, but we'll give an example of most recently. We had a tropical depression just last week spinning off our coast over Cozumel. We were very much watching it. We were very much getting reports from Mexico City, Big Brother, giving us an overview of what was happening on our doorstep, and we were also getting inquiries from Washington. We did not message on that one. You guys did not miss an email from us. We just felt that it was a tropical depression. And our reports from Cozumel, we have consular agents in Cozumel, Cancun, and Playa del Carmen, and it was heavy rain, but nothing worse than maybe what we get on an afternoon. So we didn't send any message because there wasn't any damage really occurring. Let's go back to what is a hurricane. A hurricane is basically tropical winds going against one another, forming in the northern hemisphere a counterclockwise cyclone event. And so it starts off as a tropical depression, as you can see, less than 40 miles per hour. So this is the ground speed, and once it gets above 40 miles per hour, then it's going to change to a tropical storm. So right before, I can't even remember the name of it. Is it was it Idalia? Thank you. Idalia was named, so they have to become a tropical storm before they're named. So for a while, they just called it TB1 or TB2, depending on how many were out there at the same time. Once it goes to a tropical storm, it gets its name. There is a naming formula. They're always available at the beginning of the hurricane season, so we know the names before they're actually coming up. But they do go in alphabetical order to give you an idea of how many we've had so far. So now we're going to go on to J, and J might already be named. I can't remember. Tropical storm then goes into a hurricane, and with the hurricane, they go above 73 mile per hour winds. But then we start categorizing them. So in the US, if you're reading US news reports, Florida was getting extremely concerned because they were looking at a hurricane category 3 by the time Idalia left our neighborhood and went to Florida. So it immediately increased in speed. Category 1, 2, and 3, very quickly. Usually these take time, but because of the warm waters around Florida, it really went up extra fast in that case. We're going to get immediately concerned at category 3, 4, and 5. In our discussion with Cancun and their National Guard, they do not typically close Cancun Airport until it reaches a category 3, for instance. So category 1, category 2, they will likely continue operations. But there are 2 factors in the categories of a hurricane. Category 3 is only relating to wind, has nothing to do with the water. The worst case scenario is that a category 3 arrives on land and stalls. And then suddenly, we're not really concerned about the wind anymore. Now we're concerned about how much water is being dumped. And that happened in New Orleans, and that's why all of their levees started to break. It just sort of stalled. So just because a hurricane might be category 1 or 2, we have to take a look at the water dumpage and how much it's going to rain. And then that will help us gauge, okay, do we really need to get our kits ready? Do we have our emergency plan in place? And that's what's going to bring us to the next slide, which is how do I prepare for these things? There are 2 points that we're going to cover today, focus on. One is building your emergency kits, and then the second is making a plan. These can be written down, these can be discussed with family. It depends on how far you want to go. You guys might just want to talk about it over dinner, over a cocktail, over whatever, a juice. But I do recommend having some sort of plan in your head so that, number one, it keeps us calm. A storm is coming. That's okay, I'm prepared. I have a kit that I'm comfortable with, and I have a plan that I'm comfortable with. Now, because I'm coming from the consulate, because this has been reviewed by my regional security officer, we're going to go into a lot of detail, and you guys are probably going to be like, I have to have all of this in my kit. Whatever makes you comfortable. You may not need a kit that I'm going to present to you. So when I start going through these, you don't have to be like, oh, I need to go to Home Depot right now. So just have something ready in your house for the time when it comes. So first one is basic disaster supplies kit. Water, 1 gallon of water per person per day for at least 3 days. Being in a country where we get our big garrafons and big bottles of water, we might actually already have this, actually. You know, if you're getting big bottle deliveries, 5-liter, 20-liter bottles delivered to you. Dust masks and plastic sheeting and duct tape to shelter in place. This helps with glass. There are different items that you can procure in order to reinforce your house if you're going to stay during a category 1, 2, 3. We always recommend watching the news, seeing what they recommend. You can also kind of take a look at businesses and see what they're doing with boards and reinforcing their windows. Food, at least a 3-day supply of non-perishable food, so a lot of eating now of cans and tins. So of course with that, don't forget your can opener, because it's nothing worse than having a can that's not an easy open top and no way of getting into it. Whistle to signal for help. You might have that already on hand, just throw it, have it nearby. Battery powered or hand crank radio with a horn or siren and extra batteries. So this is really getting into our security side of let's make sure we cover all the bases. During a storm, you should assume all of your telecommunications are going to be wiped out. So that happens during almost any emergency. That can be an earthquake, a hurricane, even a disaster from, for instance, 2001, 9/11. Planes hit the Twin Towers and you couldn't get a hold of anybody in New York because the cell phone towers were so overburdened with everyone calling. That can happen. Moist towelettes, garbage bags, plastic ties for personal sanitation, flashlight and extra batteries, wrench or pliers to turn off utilities. Your utilities might be a little rusty, so you might want to check that. You can check that now. How easy is it to shut off water going into your house? Not your toilet, but like the water that could possibly break during the hurricane and start flooding your house. Do you know where it is that you turn off the water leading into your house or condo? Let's see, the local maps, these can be downloaded on your mobile phone, but of course remember your mobile phone might run out of batteries, and then where are your maps? Manual can opener for food, we covered. Cell phone with chargers, inverter, or solar charger. Usually a hurricane will darken the skies very quickly. There is a little eye in it, that's the center of the hurricane. You'll see light, you'll think, oh, it's over. And then the back of the hurricane comes, and then the skies go dark again. So if you're relying on solar power, realize that for a while, you might not have that solar power. If the hurricane comes up during the night, obviously not a real impact on your solar, but if it comes during the day, you might not get as much juice going into your solar powered items. And then finally, the first aid kit. That one has an asterisk because we're going to go into that one a little later in more detail. So far, do you guys have questions? I just barreled through that without asking.
Inverter?
An inverter is, I believe, one of those that you hand crank. It's like a hand crank one.
So you...
Exactly. So you can hand crank it versus the solar. So one you can use like for just leave it out during the day, walk away. The other one relies more on manual.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think the inverters might be a little bit more difficult to find, just FYI. Additional, so once you gather your primary emergency kits, now we're going to start to expand on that and be like, okay, let's think that this is really a terrible storm and I'm going to have to leave my house. What will I want to bring with me? Prescription medication and glasses, fire extinguisher possibly, infant formula and diapers, matches in a waterproof container, pet food and extra water for pets, feminine supplies and personal hygiene, paper and pencil, paper cups, plates, towels, and plastic utensils. All of these are important if you're going to leave your house. This one is key, especially coming from the Consular Section. Please, when you hear of a hurricane, you should probably always keep your documents in a plastic bag, especially in this environment. It's tend to get moisture, and this will help to protect it if there is a flood. So what else do you want to put in there? Passport, bank account information, insurance plans, things of that nature. Household chlorine, bleach, and medicine droppers, so then you can start to sanitize water. Sometimes we're on well water, that can get contaminated. Bottles of water might not be available when you're in the middle of a hurricane. They might be gone before the hurricane arrives when you try to go get some water from maybe Home Depot, Walmart, wherever it is that you shop. It's panic buying. So if you've ever been in a snowstorm, that happens. Especially in Washington, D.C., they call for 3 inches and nothing's on the shelves. Sleeping bag or warm blanket. You might be like, why would I need that here in Mérida? You might. You might need a warm blanket. Complete change of clothing, including a long sleeve shirt, long pants, and sturdy shoes. There have been an increase in dengue cases recently. For instance, I like to go cycling, and 2 people have had dengue on my cycling team. So light long sleeve shirt, light long pants would be a good idea. Cash, USD and pesos, in usable denominations. Not 1,000 no peso, not $100 US bill, but like smaller bills that you can really use at the stores, markets. The bigger bills are fine if you're planning on trying to go buy like a bus ticket or a plane ticket to get somewhere out of the way of the storm. And books and games, puzzles or activities for, I don't know why I put children and adults. You might get bored, especially if you go into a shelter, and we'll go into that a little bit later, but you know, it's maybe not the most exciting place to be. First aid kit. The little red box, I'm just gonna point that out and say you can buy that somewhere, maybe, Walmart, Amazon, etc. A pre-made medical kit might cover everything that's listed here, or at least everything that makes you feel comfortable. And I would say having that medical kit is good not just for a storm. It's good to have a medical kit in your house, a big one, and maybe even a smaller one in your car with Band-Aids and just a few other things. You never know when you're on a trip, climbing a ruin, and suddenly you gash your hand, and all that they can give you is a paper towel. It's much better if you know that if you can go back to your car that there's a sanitizing wipe in there and actual Band-Aids and real wraps that you can use. So, medical kit, 2 pairs of latex or other sterile gloves, prescribed medical supplies, sterile dressings, cleansing agent, antibiotic ointment, burn ointment, adhesive bandages in various sizes, eye wash, thermometer, prescription medications, non-prescription drugs, and other first aid supplies. So again, a lot of these are in a kit that's already built for you. And then half of these supplies might be in a less costly kit, a smaller kit that's more portable, that you might find more beneficial for your car on an everyday basis. If you do have one at home, check periodically. The medications haven't expired, because sometimes aspirin, Tylenol are in there, and your kit's 5 years old, and suddenly, hurricane, I had my kit. Ooh, I haven't checked it in a while. All of those medications are now, so you might have to replace them and just throw in a few extra. Any questions so far? Yes.
Can I change it to Spanish so I can buy this stuff? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, in the US we had Neosporin.
Yes.
What is the name of antibiotic ointment here?
Do you know? So it's an antibiotic ointment that helps to. It's a little bit liquid. It's like a cream. It's like it's a cream. It's a cream. It's a cream that you put on your finger, like if you were to burn it, or if you were to get a cut, and it helps to heal it. And then also, it's antibiotic.
We don't have it in Mexico.
No.
Yeah, probably not. I was thinking about something that's held by another company.
But you can
but it's
just get it.
it's not really commercial, like.
I have it.
No.
Right. I have
They do have antibiotic creams here, so you might not find something exactly like Neosporin, because the thing about Neosporin is that it helps increase the healing process as well, at least a smaller scar, supposedly. But they do have antibiotic creams here, so as long as you have something like that, that's the most important part of putting into a light cut or something of that nature.
No, this one, I remember the name. You can find it in any store, like, maybe when you have like you have been hurt, or you got a like a piercing that they prescribe that, it's sterilized.
Okay.
But I don't remember the name. You can find it
They
in
do
Soriana.
sell the Mexican here, Neosporin, but if you go to the No, I forgot the name of the phone. It's called vitacilina.
Yeah,
It's
but
exactly
it's
the
not-
same.
Yeah,
It's
it's
the same
probably use it for
ingredients.
everything, the vitacilina, but it's not an antibiotic. It's not an antibiotic, so it's something that moms
Sometimes
use
the
every
brand
every-
name, the brand name is different, but the generic medication is the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that to be true because there's other things here that we don't use as much, like paracetamol is apparently very popular here. Yeah, which is basically Tylenol, suppresses temperature, body temperature.
or the-
Pain too, yeah.
Yes.
All right, and then finally, supplies for your unique needs. So there are probably things in there that I haven't mentioned. There's the baby items, and then for adults, denture, contact lenses, extra eyeglasses, things of that nature. One of the pictures I have included is batteries. I've talked about batteries a lot, but what type of battery are you going to need? Is a double D going to be good for you? Are you going to need AAA? Do you need a little tiny one for a hearing aid? Something of that nature. So your batteries, think of which batteries you're going to need. That flashlight, etc.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
Okay. I have a portable generator, well, it's not, it's a portable battery pack. It's
Uh-huh.
about this big, it's from Stanley, and it has like charger cables, and it has a flashlight, it has a lot of USB ports, and about once a month, I plug it in and I charge it up. It doesn't hold the charge forever.
Sure.
So when I drove here from the United States, I put it in my car, and I used to just keep it in the car. And then when I got here, I realized it's not holding the charger. So even if you have that kind of portable battery charger, you do need to check that a lot and make
Yes.
sure, because we all have like our phone chargers, but you know, something big, which then, you know, if you're out 4 or 5 days, you know, your battery from your phone is not
Yeah,
gonna work.
I think they call that a jack, a battery jack, or something of that nature. And do you use it when we lose power? Because a lot of people will have that on hand for when they lose power here. So not just during the storm, but because of a brownout or something of that nature.
Right.
It might not be enough to plug in a refrigerator, but it might be enough to get you a laptop, a TV, etc.
A light.
A light.
Correct.
Exactly.
The other thing is there's a, and I don't know what it's called, but I have it at home. It's like a ceiling fan light almost.
Mhm.
It's not a ceiling fan, but it's a big, big bulb. And you can charge it USB. And it has like flashing light or different intensity. And I charge that. And I'm just gonna say, I'm from New Orleans. I know a lot about hurricanes. But, so whenever there's something coming up, I make sure that's charged too. Because that will light up practically the whole house.
Yeah.
It is really strong. And so I think those things could probably be bought at Amazon if you could find them here. But having been through many, many experiences like that, I would definitely go out and buy it.
But
You know?
your point is well taken that you see a hurricane coming. These things usually don't just appear out. Now, maybe tropical depression did off the coast, but it was out here before it made any damage. But usually we see the hurricane coming. So part of your preparation should be, let's plug in the phones, let's get everything checked. And part of your checklist, when we go through make a plan, maybe you should add on, is my phone charged? Is my battery jack or a solar battery charged? Do I need to get that out? So we'll cover that in a little bit, but that's a good one to add. And then also another supply that goes beyond the list that we've presented today. So you'll find these things that are not on our list, but still good to have during a storm in preparation for one, or just everyday Mérida living. All right, so make a plan. Your family may not be together when disaster strikes, so it's important to plan in advance. How will you get to a safe place? How will you contact one another? How will you get back together, and what will you do in different situations? So we're going to focus on hurricanes, but this plan should probably cover, like, what about in an event of an unexpected disaster? Would this plan stand up for that as well? So you may not be together. Your family of 2 persons or 5 persons might be split. We talked about how communication can go down very quickly. So can I rely on a message? Can I rely on WhatsApp? Can I rely on a phone call? Should be probably part of that discussion. What's your backup? There's not going to be any one hard answer for any of this. A lot of it is going to be ideas, brainstorming, talking with people. So we recommend talking with your neighbors, talking with others in your community about plans and how to get people together. So here we have talking about colleagues, neighbors, members of faith or civic organizations about working together. We have one person that has a battery. Do we have more than one person? If you lose power on your phone, would you be able to go to somebody's house to go charge it? Using social media or sending text and group messages when you can to let friends and family far away know that you are safe. But beware the access to the internet or cellular network may be disrupted during an emergency. That last bullet, we're throwing that in from our consulate perspective because we get a lot of inquiries. My mother texted me to ask me if I was able to get to work on Monday. I was like, it's sunny here. What news are you looking at? So we don't know what they're looking at. We know that they're hearing something. So you may be going about your day and your family might be like, oh my gosh, something's happening in Mexico and the peninsula. It might actually be happening in Tijuana, nowhere near us. So, but when you do know that something's happening near you in your area, you might want to just post something on social media. Sometimes Facebook will put a safe alert if there's a big storm. They didn't do that for this one, but they might for another hurricane. You can post something, a picture of you on the beach enjoying a sunny day as an indicator that everything is fine, whatever it is, but to alleviate fears from family members, because a lot of times we'll get their phone calls. And if you're not registered with us, we'll go into that later, then we have no way of contacting you and saying, are you okay? We do have access to passport records. We do have access to the phone numbers that you put on there and emergency contacts, things of that. But in actuality, we do tend to be a little bit limited in what we can do for you and how much information that we have, which might just blow your mind from what you see in the movies. We don't have a whole lot of information on each of you. So during making your plan, considerations for access and functional needs. What is doable? So a lot of times people will say, okay, quick, go 100 miles away. Well, I don't have a car, all the buses are full, and the airport's being shut down. So functionally, how am I gonna do that? So some things are going to be an impediment of what you can do versus what you want to do. So you know that you need to get out of town, but can you get out of town? Is the roadway clear? Are there 1 million vehicles already on the road stopped in traffic and preventing you from getting out of the city, something of that nature? So take these into account of how quickly to execute your plan. If you see a storm coming and you hear that in 3 days it's going to go to a Category 5, even if that's wrong and turns out to be nothing, I would probably be recommending get out of its path. Leave now. If you know that it's going to be a storm that you don't want to be in, and you're in the cone, as they call it, of the possible hit, you might want to start executing your plan then. If you delay execution of your plan, then some of these considerations for functional needs are going to start to bubble up and rise up. And then who are individuals with access and functional needs? In addition to being without a car, are you able to walk around? Are you able to be mobile if you need to just get out of harm's way? Each of you will need to tailor your plan towards your own needs and what makes you comfortable. You might even say, you know what, this is the last hurricane season I'm going to spend in Mérida. I'm going to go to my second home elsewhere. So that is sometimes somebody's plan, is just to leave Mérida and leave during hurricane season. Hurricane season, though, begins in June. So when do you actually leave? Most of the hurricanes, as mentioned, occur about now, as we are finding, so August, September, October. But we've had a couple of hurricanes back in June. June 2nd, we actually had one come pretty close to us. And I can't remember the name of that one. I can't even remember the name of the one from last week. So, infants and young children, remember they're going to have a lot of needs. Are you going to be able to get them into a shelter? I'm sure you can. There are shelters around Mérida. We'll go into that a little bit later. Is that going to be part of your plan? And then seniors, how mobile? What type of needs are you going to have to bring with you? This goes back to the kit, oxygen tanks, wheelchairs, etc. Do you have the vehicles to be mobile to move all of that equipment around? There are some links there at the end of this presentation. We'll kind of summarize all of the resources into US-based resources and also Mexico-based resources. Pets. So pets are family, right? They're our children. We want to make a plan and make sure that they're included in the plan. They are unique in that we view our pets as our family and we cannot leave them behind. So they are coming with me to the shelter, but will the shelter take your view as well? Not always. A shelter may not accept your pets. And it's important to know that pets left behind are less likely to survive a disaster if it gets to be really bad. And if they do survive, what they'll do is do what you're doing, escaping. And they may not come back. You might not be able to find your pet. So be sure to include pets into your plan. What would you like to do with your pet? How can they be mobile as well? Maybe calling around with friends that you know are in a condo building that's sturdy, has pets, or allows pets, and maybe you can go shelter there. If you're in a lower condo or if you're in a house that might be susceptible to flooding. But we do recommend that pets be definitely a part of your plan. Shelters. So there is a link to get to this map in case you want to take a look at shelters. We'll see that there's lots of shelters, but each shelter has a limited capacity. So this kind of goes back to when am I going to execute my plan? Again, that's up to you guys on how to decide on when that's best. That might be on intensity of the storm, your comfort level of staying in the storm. If you're used to hurricanes, a hurricane 1 or 2 might not really terrify you. A hurricane 1 or 2 might terrify other people who might already be at the shelter because maybe they know that their house always floods. It floods on a bad rainy day in Mérida. It's certainly going to flood during a hurricane. So shelters might be full by the time that you want to go to them. So this is the list of shelters around the city. There are shelters throughout the state. So you might want to move away from the coast and go into the state a little bit more. Maybe abandon shelters altogether and maybe pick out a few hotels that look like they're a little bit further from the coast that you'd want to go to, and maybe that's your shelter. And if you have a pet, maybe they also don't care that you have a pet in the room with you. So that might be an alternative as well. We're getting to the end of our presentation. These are the different online resources. In a moment, we'll go through and I've taken screenshots of each one of these websites. So the first one is the Department of State travel advice. So whenever we go into hurricane season, we usually notify US citizens that hurricane season is coming, get ready for it. And this is, a screenshot of travel.state.gov. That's our one-stop shop for traveling overseas for visas, etc. But you would want to focus on, let's bring that back, on international travel here. And then that would allow you to search on Mexico and bring up some travel advice in general in Mexico. But the next one would be STEP, which is our Smart Traveler Enrollment Program. This is helps us understand who is in Mexico. I know this is going to sound crazy, but we don't have a solid number of Americans here in Mexico, in the Yucatan, in the peninsula. If someone were to say, how many Americans do we have right now? I can give you a rough estimate, but I don't know exactly how many. Mexican immigration doesn't always give us all of the information that we need, so we rely on you guys to register, so then when there is a hurricane and our loved one calls, then if you guys are enrolled in this and you've registered with us, then we can start to ping you. We have a Privacy Act, though, in place, so we can't immediately say, oh yeah, they're registered with us, they're in Mexico. That's privacy, that's your privacy. You gave us that information, we're not gonna freely give that out. We're going to try to see if you're registered. We'll give you a call and say, hey, a loved one is calling for you, can you get in touch with them? Or if you're not able to do that, would you like to waive your Privacy Act and send us a waiver that then we can call on your behalf? But we cannot release information on you. We can't release information if you were incarcerated and someone called and said, Joe has been arrested. What's his status? Well, we'll call the jail, we'll try and figure out, is Joe actually arrested? Joe's arrested. Joe's embarrassed. Joe does not want us to release any information. So we call back the other person, we're like, sorry, we have no information to give. Which is true, we have no information to give because we're not allowed to give information because embarrassed Joe doesn't want us to give the information. We do value your privacy and there are major repercussions for us if we release information without your consent. There are cases that we can override that when it's in your interest, such as, oh God, Joe is actually in a coma. And so we're going to actually use this call as a point of contact to try to get more information for Joe and try to help Joe. So we can override it, but it has to be like in a dire circumstance. And then here's the message, sorry, I had talked about earlier, of a notification. When you're registered with us, you'll get our emails. So recently we updated, if you're registered with us and we have a current email, you would have gotten an updated travel advisory. The travel advisory is an update. They get updated every year around this time. And what this travel advisory is, it ranks each state in Mexico on a level of 1 to 4. And most of our states, well, we have 2 states that are at level 2, which is equivalent to Europe. That is Campeche and Yucatan. All of our other states, Quintana Roo and whatnot, have a little bit higher, level 3, and there are a few that are at level 4, which is do not travel to this state. So if you're planning a vacation in Mexico, outside of the state, you can go into what we looked at before, travel.state.gov, that first one, and click on international travel, find Mexico, and we break it out by state. Mexico is the only country that we divide by state. Most of the time, we give a total country overview of a travel advisory. So for instance, the UK has 1 travel advisory. France has 1 travel advisory. Brazil, 1 travel advisory. We don't break it out for them. We do a compilation, and so if there's a really dangerous place in Brazil or any country, but the rest of the country is totally safe, we take all of it into account, and it comes out with one travel advisory. Next one is US Department of Homeland Security, Ready.gov. Ready.gov were a lot of the information for making a plan. So this is where you'll want to go for some more ideas on how to make a plan, what should my plan include, etc. We went over an overview to kind of get you guys to think. As you guys talk about this maybe later, you'll come up with some other ideas that we haven't covered today. And that's great, that's what you should do. And then finally, the NOAA Hurricane Center for tracking storms. So if you hear of a storm coming, you can go to NOAA, and NOAA will have it there, and you can see what the intensity is. And usually when it's identified as a tropical storm or hurricane, it will start to get that cone of probability of where it's going to go. The cone obviously gets wider and wider as we go out in time because hurricanes are very unpredictable. And then our Mexico-based resources. So temporary shelter info, you can go on to here, you can click on the left-hand side is that map that we looked at before, pinpointing all of those different shelters. And then on the right, it goes into more information about how to get out of harm's way. And you can use that for part of your plan and also printing out maps maybe.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Does that mean that they would have travel advisories of take this highway or, you know, good, what I would be interested in is what would be a good place that's 5 hours, 7 hours away? Would that information be provided by either the local or the state government?
I think it's at this one is at the state, I believe, the state of Yucatan. And it goes through the different routes. But I'll let Carolina elaborate on that one.
Yes, I'm not sure about that. Probably we need to check the
Yeah.
government,
Well, they have the routes, the emergency routes. But when the actual event occurs, I don't know if they're going to be out there directing onto the routes.
Probably Protection Civil would be the right office, just to inform about the roads.
Yeah.
And when they're open.
We would go back to we would roll back to what I had said before, which is watch the local news and see what local news is saying. But this will give you some ideas to help prepare for making a plan. Obviously, if there's a route and the hurricane is coming in maybe from the Gulf of Mexico, then that route might not be viable. But you can use it, refer to it, look at the plan, and then when the actual event happens, what part of your plan applies, what may not be, what needs to be plan B, C, D. But I think the routes are on there. I don't know if it times it though, in terms of 5 hours, 7 hours away type of deal.
Yeah, and probably depends on the weather. Because, you know, every event is different and it depends how it will happen during the province and things like that. And another option probably would be listening to the local radio stations because the government of Yucatan, they give announcements and they give it in English also. So you can listen from the government.
Part of our emergency planning at the consulate is to work with radio stations. I'll say that as well. And then finally, this document in Spanish is available, and it basically covers the Yucatan's preparation for hurricanes and gives a lot more information. This is where the list of shelters came from and how many persons it had for capacity, for instance. So it goes into a lot of detail in terms of preparation that the state does, and then also what to do or what they plan to do, sorry. And that's it. No worries, no worries. All right, so obviously, as the slide shows, it's question time. Yes?
How many Americans do you think live in the area?
What are we up to? About that. A couple, tens of thousands? 10 to 20,000 maybe. The very rough number that we give out is that our consular district has 12 million visitors in a year, and that includes 12 million, and that includes residents, Cancun.
Every year.
It includes all of our consular districts, so Quintana Roo, Campeche, Yucatan. It includes all of the cruises to Cozumel. So yes, a lot.
Can we ask other general questions?
You can ask general questions as well. Yep.
Can we sign up for the enrollment thing with the council today with you?
It's online. It's on our website. And please make sure, to enter all the information, because sometimes we find people, they don't fill it out all, and sometimes they're missing phone numbers or email or emergency contact or the city where they're going to live or stay. So please fill out everything.
I do have another question. What are the rules, both from the state's side and from the Mexican side, with regard to American citizens in Mexico participating in political demonstrations and stuff like that?
Yeah.
So for us as government employees, as a U.S. diplomat, I can't.
Yes.
For you guys, however, there are no rules from the U.S. side. However, if you start to disobey local law, then you could be arrested. So a demonstration can turn violent, for instance. And so violence would probably lead to arrest. So it depends on what the extent of the demonstration is and whether or not the demonstration is viewed as illegal. If you happen to be a body in that demonstrating, I don't know if the local law would say you're a U.S. citizen and you're not allowed to do that, but I don't believe there is a law.
I think foreign people cannot get involved, as far as I know.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I've heard that, but I want to know what the accurate information is.
yeah, I think it's foreign people, they're not allowed to be involved. But
Excuse me?
foreign people are not allowed to be involved.
Okay.
Yes.
What about, can we demonstrate in the consular area?
But for Mexican politics, yeah, but about Mexican politics, or you want to manifest about
I'm
what?
sorry, I can hear. Yeah.
Wait, do you mean the consular at the consulate?
At the consulate, and it was the consulate is U.S. property, is it not?
It is, but if you're disruptive, then we would have you removed.
Yeah, but what if you were disruptive? You just were out there with a sign.
Well, you would need to be on the consulate property, and that sidewalk is not our property.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But inside a fence or something. I've never seen the consulate.
Okay, so in order to get onto the consulate property, you need to go through a variety of security, and then you're on the consulate property. At that point, if you started demonstrating, I, as the Consular Section Chief, would say, okay, this is a little disruptive to our operation. We're trying to get these applicants in and out, and people just want to get their passports. Can security please ask that person to leave if they don't have any other service needs at the consulate? We'll do it in a polite way. And back onto the sidewalk. And then the sidewalk turns back into Mexican property. Yeah.
Every visa, temporary or permanent, requires that any person not being Mexican may not do political demonstrations.
So that's actually in the visa
That is
requirement.
actually,
There.
Oh, okay.
you can leave and sign to get a visa.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have a mailbox to send material back to the US for like social security, voting, things like that?
We have for voting. We don't have
Okay.
for social security. We,
Okay.
the closest social security office is in Mexico City at the embassy.
Okay.
So, but for voting, yes, we do have
Okay.
one. Right.
So if I want to return my absentee ballot through you, how would I do that? Can I?
Yes, during voting season, we'll accept ballots throughout the year. If you want to come in, drop it off. During the height of voting season, we usually put out a drop box so that you don't have to go through that security and come in and do like the service and add 15
Outside the
minutes.
consulate.
It's a little it's inside the consulate, but before security, like security would take it from you so that you wouldn't have to go through the
Security.
airport type security, like the metal detector and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then how long does it typically take to get to the voting?
So
station, you think?
we usually give time frames. We get the time frames from Mexico City and then we publish that. So if you're registered with us, we'll put out a voting message and it'll give you all the time frames. But a lot of our time frames, we can tell you when the ballot might get there or the information, the envelope will get there. But it also depends on local regulations. Sometimes the local regulations are it needs to be postmarked by X date, and sometimes it needs to be in our hands by X date.
But 2 or 3 weeks would be reasonable?
2 or 3 weeks would be about reasonable. We'll usually pad it pretty heavily. I'll say that as well. So we'll probably add like about 3 weeks, but in reality, it'll probably get there closer to 2 weeks.
And you don't have to make an appointment, just go there, there's
No.
a box.
Correct.
Put it in.
Yep.
So is that we get a vote by mail ballot from our state
hmm
of residence, but then we drop it off with you all?
That's correct. Yep. Yep.
Usually get it late. It comes after they already voted.
Well, that's correct, yeah. Well, that would be the thing too, because if it's being mailed, is that what happens? It's mailed from?
So it depends on your local registration. Like I'm registered in Washington D.C. All of it's online.
It's online.
It's online. I print out my ballot. I sign it. I scan it and I
You
email
can
it
even
back.
bring the envelope.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it depends. It really goes down to local jurisdiction and their requirements.
And is that only for US level, like if you're voting for president, or not Congress, or not state?
You can register for everything.
Yeah, for everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't live in the United States, so can I vote? Or
Yeah, if you
do I
were-
have- when do I register?
Yeah, if you're a U.S. citizen, you are eligible to vote. You would need to prove your state of last residence though, in order to get the ballot. So if you, we'll do Washington D.C. If I were to leave Washington D.C. and I haven't filed taxes there for a while or whatever, for multiple years, you would need to establish your residence with Washington D.C. to get your ballot from Washington D.C.
For the first time.
Yeah. If you've never lived in the U.S., then I would recommend that you
No,
contact.
I lived in Massachusetts.
Okay. Then yeah, I
When
would
my
go.
parents were alive, I
Mhm.
had an address and they could keep my
Yeah,
voting and, you know, it's it's convenient. And
Yeah,
I think it was all legal, I mean, no, you know, I was registered to vote.
Yeah.
And then during this time, I was returning 2 or 3 months, so
Mhm.
I could take care of all the stuff that's there, you know.
Reach out to Massachusetts voting, whatever their jurisdiction is. I don't know if you would go by city, county, or just the state level, depending on where you live. So like for instance, Boston might have its own jurisdiction versus a county, something like that. Yeah.
So I have to go to the state to find that information?
I would start with the state level and send an inquiry there, and then let them direct you to which jurisdiction they think that you need to go to.
You can try online or call first.
Yes.
Usually you don't have to go.
Do you in the consulate have a general mail service that if someone did not have an address here, something could be mailed from the States to the embassy to be picked up?
No, we don't have that. It's not available. We do it for the voting, but that would be it really, just for voting, to send your materials back.
Yes.
Because I would just request that if it ever comes up in the State Department discussions, that would be a wonderful service to provide for citizens abroad.
Costly.
Costly?
Costly, yes. So we have, as part of a diplomatic privilege, is we have mail services that go and get to us, and they keep track of how many boxes I get from Amazon US. But it's because it's so costly. They keep track of how much mail we get and how many packages we get. And because it is very costly, it's all done through a logistics center in the US and then kind of shipped out to every post around the world.
The military has the same service.
Yes, exactly. The military, for instance, when I was in Manila, I was actually using an APO, a military box.
About the passport,
Mm-hmm.
imagine that I have my passport in order, but for some reason I lost the passport. I didn't realize that, and I'm going to travel Monday or Saturday, something like that.
Totally.
I realized that where is my passport? I don't know where I put it. I disappeared. Somebody took it. Whatever. So, what is the emergency service related with passport that you guys offer?
Okay,
There is a-
you need to contact us and let us know so we can give you an appointment. If everything is all right, the emergency passport will be ready the same date, like 4 p.m. Okay, but you need to apply in the morning.
You have
Okay?
to call.
Yes, call, make an appointment. You have to come prepared with the Form DS-11, Form DS-64, one picture. If you have a copy of your birth certificate or your previous passport, to prove your U.S. citizenship and your ID. Okay?
But if you were to walk in with nothing on you, except for those two forms, the one is the passport application, the other is a declaration of what happened to your last one was lost, delegated, I was stolen during, I was on a bus, whatever, and your photo and the applicable fund, the applicable fee, we would be able to issue that
I
passport.
normally
Yeah.
we keep a copy. We keep a copy of the passport, so in the iPhone or something.
Yeah, those definitely help us to retrieve your passport record. Yep.
And this phone number here would be the number somebody would call, the one that says American Citizen Services?
Yes.
To make that appointment?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and there's also should be an email address on there.
There is.
Ask Mérida.
Yes.
That's it.
Another passport question. I have to renew my passport. Would I have, if I decided to do it here, would I have to turn it in and I couldn't travel until I get it back? Or can I keep my passport and renew it at the same time?
No, you have to.
I have to turn it in.
Yes, and if it's a renewal, you have to send it to the US Consulate in Guadalajara.
They'll actually give you a letter, like I've had to do that before, and they'll give you a letter that says you can travel for 2 weeks or something until, usually, at least they've done that.
That I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know about that.
letter.
So passports become an interesting thing when you.
Sorry, that's the, no, sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so you would be without your passport for I think it's 4 to 6 weeks. The address is Guadalajara. That's not misprinted. Guadalajara is our central processing in Mexico for all passport renewals. I was talking to somebody a little earlier. Yeah, okay. And talking about how during COVID, we kind of had to shut down our operations for a few months, right? You guys probably were like, I need something, and we were like, no, COVID. And then we slowly brought it back up to speed. During that time, consular affairs within the Department of State is fully fee funded. We're the only agent or bureau within the Department of State that funds ourselves based off of passport fees and visa fees. So when we shut down our passport and visa operations, guess what else we shut down? Our money flow. So we had an issue with actually hiring officers and justifying hiring officers, diplomats, to take the positions of those that continue to retire and leave the foreign service during COVID. And so we were depleted. Here in Mérida, we felt that. In all of Mexico, we felt that. So in Mérida, we just celebrated having a full complement of diplomats, of officers, consular officers, for the first time pre-pandemic last week. We just got our BLS. It's big. So what that means is that we do have a backlog of visas. But what that also means is that when all of this was happening, we looked at our bigger consulates in Mexico. Mérida is a medium operation, standard worldwide, but in Mexico, we're pretty small. Guadalajara, Mexico City, Monterrey, they are gigantic, like behemoths. And so Guadalajara is our central processor because they have the staff to take in all of those passport renewals. So yes, it goes to Guadalajara.
Should I expect it would take about the same amount of time if I went back to the US and Mexico?
No, you are prioritized. Do you know what the Department of State cringes at? An American overseas traveling that doesn't have a valid passport. So automatically, you guys are all expedited. So when you come to us and you're like, I need this, can I expedite it? We're like, no, you can't. Why? Because you're already expedited. Yeah.
It happened in him, it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it expired, and the response was.
But,
So
yes,
how much
but
time?
it's about 4 to 6 weeks, but I'll also give you another tip. But don't rely on this as your plan A. This is plan B. You want to travel back to wherever, to Europe or back to the States in 5 weeks, 6 weeks. You're going to renew your passport and hope that your passport gets back. If there is a delay with your passport, contact us. Write us at that email, write it or call us and say, my passport is in renewal. I don't have my current passport. What can I do? We'll issue you an emergency passport so that you can make your travel. And then when you get your new passport, then you'd be able to start using that as usual.
Yeah, that's been my concern, because
Yeah.
there may be some urgent need for me to go back.
Correct. So there is a way that we can get you travel. So it's not like, it is scary not having your passport. Take a copy of it. Make sure that you have a copy on your phone, on paper, etc. Great ways to do it in an email box, in your inbox on Google that you can access from anywhere. Make sure that you have that copy, and if something fails to happen, that you would plan to have your passport back on time, and suddenly it's not, or some urgent other need, contact us. We'll make sure that you can travel.
Okay, and that being said, if I register to vote here, and then I somehow get called back to the US close to the time to vote, I can still vote?
So yeah,
in the US, or
it's funny. It's your responsibility to keep track of how many times you're voting. Please only vote once. They don't like it when you vote more than once. So if you ask for an absentee ballot and you get the absentee ballot, but then you also find yourself at home in November, you could vote there. Just don't submit your absentee ballot. But if you've already submitted the absentee ballot, do not go walk down. Yeah.
On the passport, if you, in the situation where you get the temporary, in my case, I will go back to the United States. If this is valid to return here, because the passport is, well, the new passport is going to arrive here, no?
But you
Yeah.
will have entrance here.
You would still have a passport to come back into Mexico.
Right.
Remembering that Mexico is a sovereign nation, I can never guarantee your re-entry into Mexico. But generally, they'll allow you back into Mexico. However, if you are a permanent resident or temporary resident, and that visa is in your other passport, then you might have issues. So you might want to make sure that you have a copy of that as well kept.
No, they need the original.
So that is what might hold you up, and that will be a discussion with immigration.
When I returned to Mexico, the residente permanente is what they want, right?
Yeah,
The
so
passport doesn't.
if you have a card, you mean the
Yes.
card, right?
The card.
Yeah, then you should be
Then
fine.
okay.
Generally, you should be
Then when I
fine.
get there, the new passport.
Yeah,
is
we-
there.
You should,
Yeah. If you want to read
Yeah.
your emergency passport, which will be valid because it's valid for 1 year. Emergency passport is valid for 1 year.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah.
I did actually look at the hurricane tracking maps, like 2 weeks ago, because I was, I probably saw somebody else's post. And it occurred to me like, oh, there's a wave off of the coast of Guatemala. And then I would go back and check, but I don't want to sound like, how reliable or how much can I depend on the National Weather Service to provide updates about what's going on in Mexico? I mean,
those come out through Protección
Yeah,
Civil.
Protection City.
Protección
they
Civil,
Yeah, very good.
but are they,
Yeah.
Very good.
are they the same?
And they also work with NOAA.
Are they the same as what you would get from the National Hurricane Center?
so they go off of these warnings, right? So Protección Civil will put these warnings up once they start hitting those categories. But in terms of once they start mobilizing, we had been in contact with Protección Civil, and they had already mobilized their shelters out in Cancun and surrounding areas for this most recent tropical depression. So they were already on top of it, more than me that was like, we don't need to send a message. Yeah, they were definitely taking it serious. Yep.
Starting February 3, the the state news come on radio and TV every 15, 30 minutes to tell you what to do there.
But that's a 3, and I'm just.
Well,
gonna-
3 and above.
What I'm gonna say is, sometimes things are categorized as a 1, but when they actually hit, they suddenly become 2 or 3, or, the range of wind speed can vary. I don't know about
Sure.
here, but I can tell you, coming from the Gulf of Mexico, you can go from a 1 to a 3 in 12 hours. And so, I'm just saying, one thing is, I would never wait until somebody said, there's a 3 out there.
Yeah.
I would want to know, I want to know when there's a wave, or I want to know when there's a tropical depression.
So, like any other weather prediction, hurricane can change at the last minute. So this one that just hit Florida, Idalia, they thought was going to be severe, heavy damage. Not as much damage as what they thought actually occurred. That's great. We take another example on the West Coast. Typhoon, I think is what they would call it, Typhoon Hillary was supposed to really hit. It didn't hit as much as they thought it would in Mexico. So they do change a little bit based off of the waters around Florida. They knew that it was going to be a quick intensification of the storm, which is how it went from, in such a short period, the tropical depression here, and then immediately tropical storm, or maybe even Hurricane 1 over Cuba, which is just off our coast. And then by the time it went to Florida, it was already a 3. But whatever makes you comfortable. I can't tell you that, right? Like, my father would take me body surfing in a Hurricane 1. I mean, I turned out to be a pretty good swimmer because of it. But my dad's a very good swimmer, though, and so he was very comfortable with it and comfortable with me being in the water. But other parents would be like, "Your dad's crazy. What was he thinking?" Right? Like normal people. So it's what you consider to be comfortable for you. Don't worry about if other people are like, no, don't worry. If that's what makes you comfortable to have your kit and your car packed, ready to go, that's it. That's for you. Everything is personalized.
Right. Well, and I can also see that the location of the Yucatan Peninsula, you're you're getting waves coming through Cuba or Haiti and all of that. I doubt that you don't intensify that quickly because there's not that much warm water. When you get into the Gulf of Mexico and it's the water temperature, I think it's 93.
Yep.
That's a completely different way to judge to manage your expectation. You know, here, I would say, well, the expectation is not really gonna be that height, because it doesn't have the opportunity to develop very quickly.
It was part of our reason
Yeah.
for not messaging. We
Yeah.
knew that it was a tropical depression. We knew that it was sitting out there dumping rain. It wasn't that windy to cause severe damage. Were boats kind of put on shore because they were untied because of the strong current? Yes, that did happen. Were they severely damaged? Not really. These were little fishing boats that were tied out just off the coast of Cozumel, came untied, and then washed it back up onto the island. So these were the reports that we were taking in, and then also the forecast that it was a tropical depression, would probably reach tropical storm still off the coast, but by that point would slowly start moving northeast away from us. So basically we watched it, we monitored it, which is what I would recommend everybody else do, right? Go on to NOAA as many times as you want, once a day, 5 times a day. Again, whatever you want and what makes you comfortable. And watch what the current predictions are. Watch that cone of probability. Where is it striking? Has it moved? Does it keep moving, or is it pretty much set and not changed for the last couple of days?
And the reality is that with the climate change, these events will be getting worse and more frequent, is my guess.
Yes, the news is reporting that the waters off the coast of Florida caused by climate change were the reason for the quick intensification that we don't usually see. And like you mentioned, we didn't have as warm waters, although it was really warm when I went off Progresso the other day.
There's not enough time, enough distance to be intensifying.
Yep.
Yes. But I'm also fairly new, so I want to know all of these things because I have to be prepared.
Of course. Just keep watching the news, keep an eye on it, monitor it. But Protection Civil is your best bet. So they are available, I believe, on Instagram, definitely on Facebook. So you can put them into your feed, follow them, and you would get them in your feed. And they might be warning you about things a little bit too much because they cover more than just storms. Yeah. Or you can just start popping into their page as storms come into the area or are forecasted to. Did I see your?
Other question, what is the cost for renewing a passport?
Is it $135?
Yeah, I think it's $135.
$135 US is what we peg it at, and then it's based off of the pesos is whatever the current
It
exchange rate.
changes every day.
Not every day, but it's been fluctuating a bit, as we all have seen. So we've been changing it almost weekly or every other week recently.
Yeah, but if you're going to renew it, you will have to pay online.
Even if I have
If it is
appointment?
If it is a renewal, then you're going to send it to the US Consulate in Guadalajara. You have to pay online.
With a credit card or nothing?
I'm not sure about the payment options, but you will be able to find them on their website.
Well, I read on the site, there's a credit card in my name. I have a credit card in my name because I need the passport to renew my credit card.
Sorry, we shouldn't.
All right. If you have a problem like that, and
I
it's
have, my wife's credit card works.
Yeah.
I know her PIN, it works everywhere in Mérida. You know.
Yes, I think that you will be able to contact Guadalajara and ask any questions because the process is with them. you know, so they're the ones who work with that process. But the website will have all the instructions, and will give you, you know, you need to mail this, you need to fill out this form, you need to make the payment on this website, and so it will have, you will have to go and get an envelope, so it will give you all the instructions.
We have had category storms, category 1 and category 2, with those miles per hour winds. What the city does for the state is they declare an emergency, everything is closed, you are told to stay home. And if you don't want to stay home, they tell you where to go, but before the storm starts. And they keep you informed of the storm until it ends, either in 1 day or 2 days. And so it's very, very well managed and informed. And they tell you which buses, if there are any, are going to be available. And they tell you not to drive.
Well, I was going to just say, so what would be the window of evacuation if they start closing roads or that sort of thing?
No, they usually let you know like 2 days in advance.
Yeah, the government
That
of
is
Yucatan will let you know, and also Protección
And then
Civil.
they will tell you, if you're leaving, right now. If not,
Yeah.
you're staying. And that's it. And they ask you to stay at home.
Thank you. I arrived last July, so I've yet to be through a hurricane here, which I should be thankful for.
I hope you don't get that opportunity.
I know. Let's see. Maybe good luck for Mérida. Can bring 2 more years of it.
All right, we're kind of running out of time. We'll probably stick around if there's any more questions, but we're going to bring this formal presentation to a close. For those of you who have friends who said, oh, I wish I could have gone to see that, we'll have it on the library's YouTube channel in a couple of days, probably be there. So you'll be able to watch the video there. In fact, all of the videos since COVID hit of all the lectures we've had here are available at the Mérida Library's YouTube channel. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you for